Hey, it's Captain Matt, Boater's Secret Weapon, and today we're talking about hidden dangers on used boats. So if you're buying a used boat, you want to make sure that you're not buying somebody else's problems, right? Well, there's some hidden things that you got to look out for that can be very problematic. So let's talk about those. Number one is unseen hull damage. So it's not impossible to think that a boat's been run aground. Right here today, I've seen 3 boats run aground in this shoal area over there. Well, if they hit a rock or an obstruction, that can cause damage to the structure of the boat or just the hull of the boat. And if it's not repaired properly, it can cause issues down the line. So you want to inspect the underneath of the boat and the structural soundness. You do that by taking a screwdriver or a small hammer and just tapping that gel coat and listening for a different sound from one area to another. It should be a nice hard tink, tink, tink. And if you hear a thud, 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 then you're found one of those hidden dangers. It's gonna be very costly. Next is a bent prop shaft. Hey, when you run aground, when you get in too shallow or you run into the rocks, not only can you damage the prop itself, but you can actually damage the prop shaft and bend it. You imagine that thing going around at thousands of RPM, and if there's even just a little bit of wobble in there, it's going to start causing issues in that gear casing, and that vibration is going to send issues all the way up that engine. So watch out for those bent prop shafts. What you do is you put a screwdriver on the tip of it and you spin it around, and if there's a wobble, that screwdriver will be moving. If it stays straight, you're in good shape. The manifolds and risers rusting. If this boat's been running salt water at all or not well taken care of, those water jackets on the manifolds and risers can start to rust. Well, what happens? The boat overheats, you don't realize it, and you burn up your engine, and next thing you know, you've got a worthless boat. It's a big issue and something that you've got to inspect, especially if you're getting a stern drive or an inboard that has been running salt water. Faulty wiring in the engine compartment. One of the biggest concerns that you should have, especially on a stern drive or an inboard, is when you go to start it and give that spark, that there's fumes in that engine compartment and it can combust. It's why we run the blower every single time you start the boat. But if you have faulty wiring, or you have somebody replace the starter and they put an automotive starter because it was cheaper on, that automotive starter is not completely enclosing the spark, and it's allowing that spark to get out to the open air, and if there's any fumes at all, boom, and your day is done, and maybe your life is done. So checking for that faulty wiring, make sure the wiring's in good condition, make sure that the starter is a marine grade starter, is something that you want to watch out for on used boats. And the older the boat gets, the more likely you have some of those issues come up. Fuel cell leaks. We talked about the dangers of explosions in the engine compartment when you crank it up, but if there's a leak in the fuel cell, not only is there something that's very, very flammable, even if it just gets too hot, but it's also probably causing some vapors, which could cause an explosion. And also you just are leaking fuel everywhere, which is not good. So what you want to do, if you have access, get a bore scope down there and check it. If that fuel cell is, let's say, over 15, 20 years old, if it's an aluminum cell, you want to make sure that that's in good condition, maybe even pressure test it, because otherwise you've got a big repair or an expensive, very deadly situation on your hands. Incorrect paperwork. One of the dangers of buying a used boat from a private seller is that the paperwork isn't done properly, or they don't own the boat, or the title is in somebody else's name, or somebody passed away, and you're going to have issues. The danger is that you may not be able to take ownership and get that boat registered. I see it every season. I get somebody that emails me and says, hey, I've got the paperwork, but the title doesn't match up with the bill of sale, and now I can't track down the seller. It's going to be very common to not be able to track down the seller in those situations. So what you want to do is you want to check all the paperwork, boat, motor, trailer. If it's an outboard motor, you want to check those, compare it to the driver's license, and make sure that everything matches up, and get all that paperwork before you hand over the money, because it's very difficult to solve that issue after the fact. Ignoring the trailer condition. You get so excited about the boat and inspecting the motor and make sure you're not buying somebody else's headache, that trailer is just sitting off in the lot and nobody's paying any attention to it. but it can happen. I was at the boat ramp the other day and helped the gentleman that was having issues. And once we got his boat loaded up on the trailer, I said to him, sir, this trailer is not gonna make it down the roadway. It's rusty, the axle's rusty, the trailer tires are a little bit flat. He said, I just bought it and I'm gonna fix it, it'll be fine. Well, the reality is that if the trailer, the axle breaks while you're running down the highway or the interstate, you blow a tire, the structure of it breaks because of rust and corrosion, you can be in a world of hurt in a very dangerous situation, so check that. Low compression. One of the things that drives me crazy is when somebody says, oh, I don't need to test drive the boat, it's new, or they said it runs great, we ran it on a hose in the driveway, and everything sounded fine. The reality is, it's very dangerous to buy a boat with low compression that you might not even know it unless you do a compression check or you run that boat under load with some weight on it. Under load just means in the water, pushing the boat forward with weight on it. That low compression can be just enough to cause issues, but not noticeable if you're just running it on the hose in the driveway. So make sure that one, you do a compression check, and two, that you put that boat on the water and run it for a good 20-30 minutes through what we show in the demo checklist on our Boat Buyers Toolkit, which you can get for free at boatbuyerstoolkit.com. And it goes through all of the inspections that you should do on land and on the water for your demo. The next danger is that there's water in the fluids, whether it's in the oil or in the gear case. It's why I encourage you to do the on-water demo, is because maybe they just changed the fluid and they said, well, everything's fine, you don't need to run the boat. Because as soon as you put that boat in the water and run it, now that water can get into the mixture of the gear case, seep in through a bad seal. Maybe there's a cracked block, which I just had happen to a customer, a client that was a subscriber, and he said, Matt, I just bought this boat and I didn't find the JB weld on the block until I took it out, and there was water just spraying out of it. Guess what? He's got a worthless boat now that he spent good money on because he took the word of the seller and didn't go through the inspection process. Once you get water in your gear case, it'll get that milkshakey texture to it and look. It's kind of like brown and frothy. Same thing in the oil, and you can easily find that if you take the boat and run it and then check it when you're done. That will help you avoid those hidden dangers of buying used boats, because I want to make sure you buy a great boat. Get that toolkit, boatbuyerstoolkit.com. If you've got something else to add to the conversation, put it down below in the comments, or maybe you have a horror story of something that happened to you. I would love to hear about it so we can share it with others so that they don't make the same mistakes. And remember, life truly is better on a boat.